Welcome student. In the previous lecture, we have seen the byproducts of sugar industry and the treatment on the waste. Now in this lecture, we are going to see the use of byproduct molasses for the manufacture of ethanol by fermentation process. Every sugar industry is now running this distillery, that is a molasses based alcohol industry, and therefore we will see in detail the manufacture of ethanol from molasses. The process usually is fermentation process, that is using enzymes. Okay. Now it is also called alcoholic fermentation. I have told you that is enzyme based process, and therefore it is called as a biological process where the sugars such as glucose and fructose and sucrose are converted into new product, giving ethanol and carbon dioxide as a product, and therefore this method of fermentation from molasses produces ethanol, which is required for our educational purpose and in the industrial purpose. Okay, and therefore we are going to see in detail. This is the distillery unit. It is situated nearby sugar industry, and this is now termed as a alcohol industry. These are the molasses storage tanks, and this is the distillery. Now the flowchart diagram for the production of ethanol from molasses by fermentation method. The molasses, which is obtained by separation of sugar crystals, contains 40 to 50% of sucrose. That much percentage of sucrose is harmful to yeast to convert the sugars into the ethanol, and therefore the molasses containing high percentage of sucrose is first diluted by adding water, and therefore the first step is the dilution of molasses. The molasses, which is stored in the molasses storage tank, is diluted by adding water to reduce the percentage of sucrose to 10 to 15%, and this much percentage is now suitable to act the yeast. Now the yeast, after dilution of molasses, the yeast required for the conversion of these sugars into ethanol is grown up in the yeast culture tank. This is a yeast culture tank. The molasses is taken from this for dilution. This is a yeast culture tank where the required yeast is grown up. Now, when the dilution completes, the mass, that is the mass, is taken in this tank, and the yeast is also bring to react with the mass. That is, the diluted molasses is reacted with the yeast. Now yeast requires the food, and therefore the molasses is enriched with addition of ammonium sulfate. Some sulfuric acid is required to arrest the unwanted bacteria, and zinc oxide, this is added in the dilution tank. That is a dilution tank. This is a dilution tank, and that is totally stirred to mix this matter uniformly. Now this matter enriched with the nutrients is taken for the further process. Okay. Now the yeast from the yeast culture tank is brought in contact with this diluted molasses. As the reaction starts, the yeast converts the sugars present in the molasses into two products. The first, the yeast supplies two enzymes. The first is known as enzyme invertase, which converts the sucrose, that is disaccharide, into two monosaccharides, glucose and fructose. And the second enzyme supplied by the yeast, it is known as a zymase, which converts the sugars into the ethanol. While production of this, the CO2 gas is evolved, and hence the process appears like boiling. Heat is also evolved as it is an exothermic process, and therefore cooling coils are also there to remove the heat. After production of the new product, that is a ethanol, it is taken for the separation. This is known as a column. It is a high, that is a tall column. Okay. Here the abbreviations are clear. Okay. We will see the reaction taken place in this in detail in the further slides. Okay. The steps I have told in the manufacture of alcohol, the dilution, as it contains 50% of sucrose, which is a very high concentration, and it is helpful to the yeast growth, and therefore it may cause the death of the yeast, and therefore this percentage must be reduced. It is reduced by dilution with water to 10 to 15%. Now it is taken in the largest steel tank. Yes, I have told the second point, addition of nutrients, because yeast requires nitrogenous food for its growth, and therefore nitrogenous compounds present in the molasses are complex and insufficient, and therefore this nitrogen material is added from outside to enrich the nitrogenous content of the molasses, and therefore ammonium and magnesium sulfates or phosphates are added to the molasses, which serve as a food for the yeast. Acid is also added because the fermentation process occurs at the acidic pH, that is a range of 4 to 5, and this is achieved by adding sulfuric acid. The another cause of adding sulfuric acid, because sulfuric acid arrests the growth of unfavorable bacteria, and therefore sulfuric acid is added to this medium. Now the aqueous solution containing the balanced quantity of nutrients required for the fermentation is called as a fermentation medium or vat, or it is also called as a mash. Now, growth of yeast culture in the yeast culture tank. Students, not all yeast converts the specific product into the required chemical. Now look, the milk is converted into root, that is curd. It cannot be possible by any, the specific yeast is required. Same is the case here. The yeast must be selective, and therefore the selected yeast, about 50% of the total volume, is allowed to grow in the culture tank, and this growth of yeast is done by building up process. What is the building up process? It is the process where the small quantity of yeast taken in the small vessel or tank and it is allowed to grow. Then it is transferred to a larger tank where the matter will get more space to grow. Again it is transferred to again larger tank to grow excess, and thus they are built up and the process is known as building up. Here for the testing of the yeast whether it converts the sugars present in the molasses into the required product ethanol. For this testing, some sterilized molasses is added to the yeast culture tank. That is, yeast is grown up in this medium because this yeast is to work with our molasses, and therefore it is grown up in the sterilized condition of molasses. That is, the yeast is knowing the work which he has to done. Okay. Now when diluted molasses and yeast are combined, the fermentation process starts in the fermentation tank. The action of specific microorganisms on a substrate to produce a new chemical or chemicals is called as a fermentation. The diluted molasses containing balanced nutrition, that is the mash and yeast from the culture tank, allowed to react. A small amount of dilute sulfuric acid added to maintain the acidic medium. Now, the yeast supplies two enzymes. First one is enzyme invertase and second one is enzyme zymase. The enzyme invertase converts the cane sugar, which is a disaccharide, into two monosaccharides, glucose and fructose. This is the disaccharide sucrose that is present in the cane sugar. It is converted by the enzyme invertase into monosaccharide glucose and fructose. Now out of this, glucose is converted into ethanol by second enzyme zymase. This is the, for example, glucose, action of zymase enzyme, production of ethanol and evolution of CO2 gas. During fermentation, the liquid has appearance of boiling due to the evolution of carbon dioxide gas, and therefore the process is called as a fermentation, from the Latin word fever, means to boil. During fermentation, the yeast must be active and alive. For this purpose, the air is bubbled through the liquids. Now students, this fermentation process is slow and it is completed in 2 to 3 days. That is, much time is required for the completion of process. Now how it is indicated that the reaction is complete? It is indicated by the fact that when the evolution of CO2 gas ceases, that is stops, the reaction, that is the conversion of that is glucose into ethanol, is completed, and then the yeast is filtered off. The liquid which is obtained after fermentation is known as a wash or wood, and it contains low percentage of alcohol. It is about 8 to 10%. With this, I conclude my lecture. Thank you.